That's one of those little synchronicities, Debbie, that I love so much. Mommy, why don't people care about the trees? This quote from an article in the March issue of Sojourners magazine entitled Dancing in the Dragon's Jaw by Lydia Wiley-Kellerman speaks volumes about the plight of parenting in a time of impending climate catastrophe. She asks what we ground ourselves in while facing what feels inevitable, what surely is apparent to even our youngest. The dragon, from a reference to the book of Revelation in Christian scripture, waits for the birth with the intention of devouring the child in this end times tale. The metaphor for Lydia and her children living in Detroit means the dragon is disguised as, quote, the spirit of a comeback city, while at the same time turning off water service to homes and threatening privatization. Uses the Marathon oil refinery 4 miles from her home to poison the air. Lives in children's asthma-swollen lungs and pours raw sewage into basements and the river when the rain falls hard, end quote. She equates the dragon with environmental racism. Scientist, professor, and enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, I read about the indigenous belief system that counters the notion of ownership of any part of our planet. Instead, we are one with our earth home. We take nothing from it without first asking, without first assessing what we really need, without giving something back in return. We are in a reciprocal relationship with our planet, with the land upon which we stand. It is only our colonialist roots that employ the idea that where we live and make our homes belongs to us, having taken or purchased it from a previous owner. In our case, that is a people who lived with a mind toward reciprocity, the land not their property to withhold or to give, but a living, breathing being with which they were in relationship. Perhaps assumed we might be too at the outset, learning differently by experience. All flourishing is mutual, Kimmerer has said. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speaks of this concept of mutuality also in words that have become familiar to us from the readings in our hymnal. Quote, "We are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality," end quote. Victoria Loors, co-founder of the Wild Church Network, says that religion's purpose is to restore our relationships with one another and with the earth. We belong to a larger community that contains people, but this community can also be understood as containing other species, other life forms. The apocalyptic nature of what is happening to our planet now makes it hard for even those of us who live a privileged life to look away from the reality. But still, some manage to deny or to ignore. Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh suggests that the earth is above, below, around, and within us. It is everywhere, and all that we are made of comes from the same elements. It is more than just our environment. We are the earth, he says. And so we come to see our planet as something alive that we are bound up with and must be compelled then to transform our relationship with. When we treat the earth like someone we have fallen madly in love with, there is no separation. And whatever we do for it brings us only joy and nourishment. This is the kind of relationship we need if we, the earth and all of its component parts, are to survive. The Reverend Dr. Randy Woodley, activist, scholar, teacher, and Cherokee descendant, in his new book, Becoming Rooted, a series of meditations designed to reconnect the reader with sacred earth, talks about indigeneity. We are not, many of us, capital I, indigenous people here. But he says that we are all indigenous to somewhere, that if we trace our lineage back far enough, we will find ourselves among a people who lived in relationship to a land for perhaps eons of time, having worked out their relationships to plants and animals and weather and the like. And that relationship is part of our DNA, carried forward through the generations. He invites us to get in touch with that indigeneity, saying that it matters from whence we have come, connecting past to present in order to heal into the future. Becoming rooted to the land is the only way to restore our earth, he says. Friday was Earth Day, originally celebrated in 1970 at the behest of U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson. Every year since, on this occasion, people, I found out it was like the second highest, mostly participated in secular holiday. Every year on this occasion, people gather and march and listen to important talks about the state of the planet and educate themselves about what might happen next or what they might do to effect change. It is a festive time of honoring our earth and a heartbreaking time as well, given the realities of our days. So every April, the fervor rises and wanes, and we go back about our business. So much to think about. So much we could do in response. Where to begin? Will it matter? What is one small step we could each take for the sake of this planet, our body, this pulsing organism in space? Here on Cape Cod, we are fortunate to have organizations who are in touch with the issues that affect us most. Our oceans are warming and sea levels are rising, affecting the creatures that dwell within them. Wilder storms cause flooding and erosion, while we continue to build on the edge with little regard for the bigger picture. All of this fueled by our penchant for fuel, honestly. There are few climate change deniers in our midst here, as we acknowledge the increasingly rapid pace of climate change. Nonprofits like the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative, 5Cs for short, our designated community outreach recipient for the month, provide webinars and educational opportunities, keep us in the loop through their newsletter, maintain a website full of great information, and do advocacy work for legislation and policy change at all levels, hoping to protect both people and our planet. They are driven by a love, though, for this place, by a connection to this land that may well go back many generations, regardless of the origin of their ancestors' arrival here. And they see the whole of it, not just Cape Cod or the Northeast or the US, but a planet in jeopardy. In all the pieces of this puzzle this morning, be they indigenous persons, academics, or scientists, religious leaders or activists, one thing stands out for me as pivotal in creating hope for the future: a deep understanding of our mutuality as people at one with place. In my study time at the Ministers Association Institute this winter, I took a course entitled Mourning the Earth, led by Claudio Carvalles, Associate Professor of Worship at Union Theological Seminary. His premise was that if we are paying attention, we can't help but be in mourning for our planet. He talked about extractivism, the process of extracting natural resources from the earth for sale, something that exists in an economy that depends on this very thing for survival. And he said that it is impossible to exploit something that you also love, that you are in relationship with. He suggests that nature is a European construct wherein we find it as either transcendent or as something to be feared, and that we have an antagonistic relationship with it, needing to dominate or to control it. It is in the dismantling of such theologies of omnipotence that we can become rooted in relationship and co-creativity. During one of our sessions, Claudio asked us to go outside if we were in a warm enough climate, or to find a houseplant if it was cold, and to sit with it for a while. He gave us 20 minutes for this exercise. He asked us to transcribe a conversation we might have with this living being. What would we say to it if we could engage with it as an equal part of our coexistence? It felt a little silly at first, I will admit, but I ran downstairs and got a houseplant, sat down on my cushion. So there was Eve Ensler in our reading this morning, laying in a hospital bed with nothing to attend to but the tree outside her window. And over that short period of time, she became intimately acquainted with it. I imagine you can guess where I'm headed with this. It has been a while since I have asked you to do anything participatory in worship together, maybe since we were on Zoom alone, so we are long overdue for a bit of moving out of our heads and into our bodies. When you arrived, you were given a little glass jar of sand and sea, the two things most affected in our part of the world by climate change, and something to write on and with. For those of you on Zoom, now is the time to grab that glass of water and something to write with that I mentioned in the e-blast. So I ask you, if you could say anything at all to these elements, what would that be? Expressions of love or regret, hope or sadness, a shared memory? I'm going to give you a few minutes to jot some things down, the beginnings of a conversation, while we listen to the sounds of the waves that are so familiar to us. I won't ask you to share your thoughts unless you want to. So let's listen for a few minutes and connect. What would you say to the sand and sea that you hold in your hand? I will ring the chime when it's time to stop. How was that for you? Would anyone like to share? Mary? Wait, let's get the microphone so everybody can hear you. Oh, sorry.
Three words: support, calming, blissful.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back.
In a few weeks, I will give the cremated remains of my son back to the earth, as God has already taken back his soul and welcomed him home.
Thank you.
I wrote to the sea. I said, you offer me comfort, peace, expansiveness, and a sense of perspective, not to mention food, recreation, taste, feel, and touch. I hope you offer the same to generations to come.
Thank you, Kathy.
I find you so relaxing and hope we will stop polluting you. I love walking on your shore and swimming in your waves, boogie boarding on your surf while respecting your power.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote a poem. Waves rush to shore, toppling over into white foam that smooths into wet sand, that welcomes bare feet, leaving footprints for a time, until another wave topples over, leaving sandpipers dancing in its wake, running hither and thither, leaving footprints for a time, until another wave topples over.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else? Beth?
Oh, Beth, yeah. I'm sorry.
The little pieces of sand nestle in with each other, make room for each of their shapes. There's white, there's black, there's all the in-between colors. And the patience of all the eons it took to wear down stone to make that sand, the sand is still patient for the next day. And the water allows us to look down through to each of those pieces together.
Thank you, Beth.
Less elegant, a feeling of home.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. Ed?
I said, thank you for all you give in pleasure, sustenance, the source of power, and a sense of peace. May we always respect each other.
Thank you, Ed. Dave?
Yeah, the sand has many grains of different colors and sizes, all holding together and shifting with the flow.
Thank you. Is there anyone at home who took this question up and would like to share? You can raise your hand. Janet?
One of the greatest natural forces on Earth yet devastated by the carelessness and selfishness of humankind. I pray we learn before it's too late that despite your immense power, you are not invincible.
Thank you, Jan. Lori?
To the sea, I give my joy of swimming at Schoolhouse Pond and Sheep Pond, across the ponds and down through the coves with total tranquility, enjoying the beauty of these places and the beauty of the moment and the pleasure of swimming through silver and sunlight in this treasured place.
Thank you, Lori. Anyone else? Thank you, everyone. So back to Lydia Wiley-Kellerman's piece. She posits that we need to teach connection to our children in order that they come of age already in relationship with the earth and all its inhabitants. She advocates naming into being the world around her children, loving and mourning and taking their anger and grief to the streets. She notes Buddhist scholar Joanna Macy's belief that we need these new generations of leaders coming to the table, carrying their grief and moving forward to the life-sustaining culture that can be born of it. It's not too late for us to become a part of the process either. When we truly connect with our earth as part of who we are, develop a real relationship with it, reciprocal, mutual, the flourishing will come. So I want to offer now a water blessing on this sand and water, taken from the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address, and you can hold your jars up to receive it. We give thanks to all the waters of the world. We are grateful that the waters are still here and doing their duty of sustaining life on Mother Earth. Water is life, quenching our thirst and providing us with strength, making plants grow and sustaining us all. Let us gather our minds together, and with one mind, we send greetings and thanks to the waters. Later this afternoon, I will return our blessed sand and sea back to Linnell Landing Beach, where I gathered them up, return them with the love of this place and this people, a first step in building our relationship, our connection with our earth home. May we deepen in that understanding and felt sense of mutuality, that all may flourish. Blessed be, and amen.